Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I just finished reading. It's called The Help by Kathryn Stockett. The Help is a historical fiction novel set in the 1962 Mississippi, southern United States. It follows the three main characters. The first character is Skeeter. Skeeter is a girl who just graduated from college, wants to become a writer. Her mom is disappointed in her because she still hasn't found a husband and gotten married yet. Skeeter sees how unjust the social rules in her southern hometown are, and how her white peers treat their black mates. She wants things to change. The second character is Ebeline. Ebeline is a black maid in her 50s who has spent her entire life looking after white kids. She's now raising her 17th white child. Ebeline lost her son, so she's determined to raise the kids she looks after as best as she can. Ebeline and her son share a common interest in writing. The third character is Minnie. Minnie is also a black maid. She is Ebeline's best friend and has the best cooking skill in Mississippi. Despite her amazing cooking, she also has a sassy mouth and is not afraid to talk back to anyone. That's why she has a hard time getting a job, since talking back to a white boss is not acceptable back then. The story starts when Skeeter decides to write a book about the life experiences of black maids in Mississippi to show the racism and discrimination they face every day working for their white bosses. Ebeline, Minnie, and Skeeter have to work together on this very risky project and publish a book that they hope will change the way things are. I enjoy reading this book so much. The story is very character-driven, so the characters must be really interesting for the story to be compelling, which I think this book does a great job of. While reading this book, I learned a lot about how black people were treated in the southern United States back in the 60s. We get to see how things worked back then. Public places like supermarkets, libraries, and hospitals were separated between white and black people. Even though white people had black maids cooking their food and bathing their children, they still didn't want to share living spaces with them. For instance, in the book, one of the white characters is pushing for laws requiring a separate bathroom in every household for black maids because they are concerned about catching diseases from them. We get a glimpse of the political tensions through the maids' perspectives.
What's going on out there, mister?
Colored people off. The rest of you, let me know where you're going. I'll get you close as I can.
What happened?
I don't know. Some nigger got shot.
You May Davis?
What you want me to do?
You're under arrest.
Just call my husband. Just call my husband. Wait a minute. I want my purse.
No, you're under
I want
arrest
to get
now.
my purse. I want to get my purse. Save me. Don't fight. Don't make save me. Save me. I want my purse. I want my purse.
We see how the justice system tends to favor white people and how cases involving the ambiguous deaths of black people are often being pushed aside because nobody cared if a black person died back then.
You gonna be all right, Miss Clark?
I'll be all right. You go on now, Henry.
You want me to walk?
No, thank you. I'll be all right.
Well, you have a good night.
Which way you going?
We view this as
When there are white cops in the black neighborhood, Ebeline, one of the main characters, gets scared for her own life and for her friends and neighbors.
state. There is no state with a record that approaches that of Mississippi.
Everything feels unsafe just because the color of your skin. The pacing of the book is fine, but I feel an emotional roller coaster when reading the maid's perspective and Skeeter's perspective. In the maid's perspective, things are so tense and risky. It's a life and death situation. But when we get back to reading Skeeter's perspective, it's about her being sad over a boy. So, I find Skeeter to be annoying at times and want her perspective to be over as soon as possible so I can read the maid's perspective. But I think that that's not entirely a bad thing because it showcases how different Skeeter's life is compared to the maid she's working with. Abilene, Minnie, and Skeeter are the three main perspectives that we follow. Minnie is my favorite character. Reading about her is so much fun. She makes me audibly laugh so many times. Abilene is also such a kind-hearted character. Even when she is raising someone else's child entirely, she still genuinely cares about that child's future. She's also the first maid who agrees to work on the book with Skeeter because she believes that things can be better. My favorite scene from the book is when Abilene is trying to come up with a story to teach the kids she's looking after not to see people who are different as less than her. She doesn't want this white kid who she cares for to grow up and be the kind of person who treat her as less than. Basically, she tells the kid a story about a man from outer space named Martin Luther King. She said that he looks just like humans, with hair, a nose, and everything, but people are still mean to him simply just because his skin is green. And I think this scene could spark a really interesting discussion about how racism and hatred in general are through nurture and not nature. Hate is learned, and it's up to us to stop perpetuating this hatred. This book definitely falls under the category of the white savior trope, in my opinion. This is especially clear when we look at the relationship between Minnie and her boss, Celia. I feel like part of the reason Celia is quote-unquote nice towards Minnie is because she grew up poor and is more empathetic towards others. But it's also because she literally doesn't have any white friends. She doesn't work, she stays in the house all day. So of course she wants to be close with Minnie, the only person in the house most of the time other than herself. And I'm not saying that if Celia were to have friends, she would immediately become horrible to Minnie. But I see a lot of people praising Celia for being such a good person. And I'm like, just because a white person is not being racist and horrible towards their maid doesn't mean they're a good person. It's even more clear when we look at Skeeter's perspective, because she is writing a book to fulfill her dream of becoming a writer and achieving her goals, and the story of those maids are just a stepping stone for her to get there. Skeeter is also the one who is not careful about the book and almost gets exposed. Those characters are only there for white people to insert themselves into so that they can feel better about themselves, because in the end of these kinds of stories, all the racism and discrimination is solved just because a brave and kind white person decided to help them. In conclusion, the book was still very entertaining to read and shows the struggles that black people had to face in Southern America back in the 60s. That's why I think the book still has some merit in it comparing to the movie adaptation of the book. Even Viola Davis spoke about it in a New York Times interview saying, quote, "I just felt that at the end of the day, it wasn't the voices of the maids that were heard." She said that the film missed the opportunity to represent black maids in the story. I have watched the movie and totally agree with this statement. The movie makes it seem like the story is just about a kind white woman who decided to write a book to help the black maids. I gave this book 5 stars because it was an entertaining read. Nonetheless, it's hard to put down because the story was very compelling and it taught me a lot about the lives of black maids.